Hello grade 10s, welcome back to a new video. So in today's video we'll be doing the last chapter of economics grade 10, which is the economic readdress. Hi and welcome to the video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, share with your friends and family. And Zane Tutors family would like to thank you for being with us this year and good luck on your exams. And I hope you make it and pass and make it to grade 11. So we're going to be doing the economic redress. So let's look at what we need to know. So this topic deals with efforts being made in South Africa since 1994 to redress the inequalities of the past. So how is the government making up for the losses that certain ethnic groups in South Africa lost due to apartheid rules? So that's the economic redress. Okay, so we are correcting imbalances of the past, just like Black women were not given opportunities to occupy high positions in businesses, but now it's a requirement based on the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act, which advocates for women to be given positions of power in businesses in order to correct the imbalance of the past. This applies to human resource, natural resources, capital, entrepreneurship, the democratization of economic procedures, and various macroeconomics adaptations. So let's talk about meeting basic needs. So since 1994, the South African government has implemented many programs to overcome the economic and social problems it inherited from the previous apartheid government. So when the freedom came accessible in South Africa, a certain political party gained power. So the mission of that political power was to readdress the problems that the Black people, the colored communities and Indians had as a problem, right? So they had to integrate them into the economy as they were not well integrated because of the apartheid rules. So what has the South African government done that is in power in freedom to readdress those imbalances of the past? So for them to be able to meet the basic needs of previously disadvantaged ethnic groups, they started the Reconstruction and Development Program, which is the RDP. This was one of the most important programs and had the following objectives. So objectives are goals. So the Reconstruction Development Program was started so that it can contribute towards nation building, democratizing the state and the economy, building the economy, developing human resources, and meeting basic needs. So that's what the Reconstruction Development Program was started for. That's why people gain access to housing. Housing shelter is a basic need in South Africa. So for them to meet the basic needs of previously disadvantaged South Africans, they introduced the RDP, Reconstruction Development Program, and we have seen it build house and continues to build houses for the less privileged. And then let's talk about human resources. Here, with the RDP, they were correcting or making sure that previously disadvantaged people have access to basic needs. So they use the RDP. This can become an essay type question, as it was not been asked. It's the first time you're doing this topic, so it can be an essay type question. Let's talk about the human resources. How did the government improve human resources, labor, in the country? To improve human resources means to improve the skills and abilities of people, right? So the government has identified the following areas as being important in developing South Africa's citizens so that they can play a productive part in the economy. So they were like, okay, let's look at their level of education. Adult education up to 83% in 1996 to 89 in 2021. So the goal was like, okay, we have adult education at 83% in 1996. By 2001, it should be at 89%. And then the literacy of 15 to 24-year-old up from 83 in 1996 to 96 in 2001. So they had planned that they want educated people's number to increase from a certain level to a certain percentage. So matric pass rate up from 54% in 1996 to 68% in 2022. So they wanted more than 54 people to pass matric, so they focused on education. So all South African children have the right to schooling. That is why that is how they knew that they were going to accomplish the educational aspects of bridging the gap between the imbalances of the past. So they know that they had to make compulsory for children to go to school. That's why a lot of township schools, you don't pay school fees. So it's part of readdressing educational problems. Schooling is free of charge if parents cannot afford to pay school fees. Single curriculum and same examination at the end of each phase. New detailed curriculum and assessment policy statements for all grades to be implemented in 2012 to 2014. So in 2012, the curriculum of the country changed. It was no longer the same as what was taught, which was called the NCS. So after 2012, the curriculum of South Africa changed to CAPS. And then we have the Tirisano campaign. To also help with education, they introduced the Tirisano campaign so that effective schools and professionals to have effective schools and professional teachers to fight against HIV and AIDS through knowledge and information. So they were going to schools, informing people, the language and mathematical literacy, availability of further and higher education for male learners. There we have NSFAS paying for a lot of learners, creating effective organizations from the national and provincial Department of Education. And then let's talk about training. They also addressed training. Lack of training in the right skills contributes to high unemployment rates in South Africa. How? These are the laws to create training opportunities for previously excluded people. So we have the South African Qualification Act, SAQA. We have the South African Schools Act. We have the Skills Development Act. So they help train previously disadvantaged people in order for them to have the right skills to participate more effectively in the economy. And then you have the Employment Equity Act and the Skills Development Levies. You will learn more about them in grade 12. So let's look at the Human Resource Development Strategy of 2001. Aims to improve the potential of all people in South Africa by a high economic growth rate, more job creation, a better quality of life for all, wide participation in the labor market, and better skilled citizens. So the Human Resource Development Strategy goal is to achieve all those points. And then let's talk about the Skills Development Act and the Sector Education and Training Authorities, SEDAs. Their aim is to ensure that all workers in each sector have the training needed to do their job. Let's look at the employment equity. They make sure that everybody is treated fairly, okay, in the workplace. Equity means equality. So black ownership of businesses up from, they wanted to improve the number of black people who owned businesses from 3.9% in 1997 to 9.4% in 2002. They did that through giving them access to capital or assistance in form of cash. So employment equity aims to get rid of unfair discrimination in the workplace. The Employment Equity Act aims to promote our constitutional right to equality and democracy, remove unfair discrimination in the workplace, redress the effects of past discrimination, develop a workforce representative of the population demographics, promote economic development, promote an effective workplace, and implement our obligations as members of the International Labour Organization. So the Employment Equity Act is to make sure that everybody is treated fairly, given fair opportunities in the workplace. So to redress means to make things right, okay? To correct. Let's talk about natural resources. So South Africa has many natural resources which need to be carefully controlled so that we all benefit. So let's talk about land. Number one, black people were not allowed to own properties in certain areas, and some of the black people's properties were taken or seized by the apartheid government. So how do they address land issues in the country after 1994, after the elections, when we're now in freedom? So during the apartheid era, many South Africans were forced out of their lands without being paid for it and had to settle in other places. Since 1994, the government has introduced land reform and is redistributing land through land claims. So if your land was previously taken by the apartheid government, you can lay a complaint to the correct departments, and they will help you get compensated if your land cannot be given to you. So you'll be compensated for your loss of land. Even if it's a family unit, you just put up a claim. People have been paid already who had claimed that their land was taken unfairly by the apartheid government. So people who were removed from their land homes can apply to reclaim that land or receive payment for it. Minerals and energy. Mining plays a very important role in our economy, and South Africa is one of the world's biggest producers of gold and platinum, as well as being one of the leading producers of base metals. So metals other than gold and platinum and coal are called base metals. So the Minerals and Petroleum Resource Development Act of 2020 regulates the ownership, extraction, use and processing of South Africa's minerals. So the apartheid government had their own rules, but the Petroleum Resource Development Act that was established in 2020 regulates ownership, extraction and use and processing of South Africans minerals to make sure that everybody benefits. So the government is the sole custodian of all South African minerals and petroleum resources, and people must apply for rights to mine these resources. The act obliges applicants to create opportunities for people from historically disadvantaged groups when minerals are extracted and processed. So let's talk about infrastructure. What are other infrastructural development that took place in black communities? There is electricity, there is sanitation, there is water, and there is asset waste in our township. Electricity, Eskom is a parastatal which provides electricity. Okay, the parastatal is a state-owned business. And then with sanitation, modern sanitation facilities are being provided in many poor communities. And then water, the government aims to provide all communities with access to clean piped water, and that has already done so in many areas. Acid waste, the mining industry is under pressure to improve treatment of its acid waste water. Yeah. So let's talk about fishing. The Marine Living Resource Act of 1998 aims to uplift coastal communities by giving them more access to marine resources. So people that live next to seas are now allowed to have more access to fishing. Okay, the government has implemented a quota system which allows only a limited catch per person or for each fishing vessel to try to guard against overfishing. So people are only able to fish this much. They cannot exceed a certain number so that fishes don't run out in the sea. And then an alternative way to provide consumers with fish and to create employment is to farm fish commercially. This is only practical with some species and in certain area. So people are able to farm fishes in their backyards or in their factories as well. So you don't just only get the fish from the sea. We can have pools and fish in factories now. Okay, it is commercial, and people can sell. Let's talk about forestry. trees, fields, how are those protected? The National Forests Act of 1998 aims to protect the environment and ensure that our forests are properly managed and developed. So the Department of Water Affairs and Forestry leases or sells state-owned forest land to private sector so that they can plant trees and make toilet paper and so on. The restructuring process includes phasing out plantations on land that is not environmentally suitable to forestry. So we have to take care of the environment. So let's talk about capital. Small, micro, and medium-sized enterprise, which are called in short SMMEs, are important to South African businesses. They employ more South Africans than big companies. So do you know that small businesses create more employment than big companies? If you didn't know, now you know. So how did the government make capital accessible to the previously disadvantaged people? They did that through SMMEs recognition. So SMMEs need access to capital to start up and grow. Banks and investors are not often willing to lend money to entrepreneurs who do not own assets to offer as collateral security. So lending money as capital for SMMEs is considered high risk because if the SMME does not succeed, the entrepreneur has nothing to sell or repay them. So banks can only give you loan if you have something, a house, a land that they can use to pay themselves in case you cannot pay them back. So the South African government and the private sector have launched initiatives to make capital available to SMMEs at low and reasonable interest rates. SMMEs use the capital to start new businesses or to buy property and equipment, or to use as working capital until they start getting an income from the sale of goods and services. So let's talk about capital to acquire businesses. You are given capital to buy businesses, okay? Business partners. This organization invests capital, skills, knowledge into new or growing SMMEs. The government has 20% stake in the company, and its major private sector shareholder includes Rembrandt, Sanlam, Billiton, Old Mutual, Anglo American, De Beers, and the 4 major banks. So business partners invest only in small SMMEs that need between 150,000 and 15 million. They check on the availability of the SMME and then take a majority stake in the business to protect their own risks. So they have the bigger share in your business. Let's talk about capital to acquire property. So this is capital to buy a business. You become partners with the government and all these big companies like Old Mutual, Bellatone, Anglo American. And then let's say you want capital to buy a property. You want to start your own factory and you want to buy a certain factory property. The National Empowerment Fund aims to protect past discrimination against historically disadvantaged individuals. The NEF Market Investment Unit is a trust that owns share in state-owned enterprises. Only previously disadvantaged groups can take part in this scheme. So this is for the National Empowerment Fund is only for the previously disadvantaged. So they can help you buy property. And then let's look at working capital needs. Let's say you have a shop and you don't have money to buy stock. That is working capital, okay? Eccles Associate, I hope I'm calling it correctly, is a corporate finance and financial advisory firm. ES Supplier Finance Solution program targets SMMEs that supply goods and services. SMMEs that develop cash flow problems when they have to refill a large order or need to supply parastatal organization can borrow working capital from SFS. So here you need to know where they get money to buy businesses or to start them, where they get money to buy property, or where they get money for working capital. And with that, we are done for the term. No, we are not done. We need to look at, sorry about that, entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurs, how the government has helped with regards to entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurs are needed to develop and create more businesses and create jobs. So SMMEs employ over half of all the people working in formal sector. So there are government departments and other organizations to help SMMEs. Ntsiki Enterprise Promotion Agency, Ntsika, is a state-owned agency which provides non-financial support to SMMEs. For example, it helps with management, development, marketing, business contracts, research, and business development. So these are the solutions to help Black entrepreneurs. Is the Ntsika Enterprise Promotion Energy, the Kula Enterprise Finance. It provides financial and other support to SMMEs, for example, loans, a national credit, a guarantee scheme, grants, capacity building, equity funds, and mentorship schemes. And then we have government departments. So, Department of Trade and Industries Chief Directorate, Enterprise Development formulates policies and strategies to help SMMEs. So, the government also help small business and medium enterprises by developing strategies and policies that help them. And then the National Manufacturing Advisory Center supplies advice and information to these small medium enterprises. And in technology, Women in Business promotes the use of technology by women who own SMMEs. Let's talk about final education as well. South Africa has fewer entrepreneurs than other developing countries. This limits our growth and job creation prospects. So the more entrepreneurs we have, the more economic prospects we will have. Let's talk about the private sector. The private sector believes that we should encourage entrepreneurs in order to grow the South African economy. And then the more successful entrepreneurs means more job, which in turn means more consumers with money to spend on the products and services from the private sector. So it is in its own interest for the private sector to promote entrepreneurship because people are able to work, and when people are able to work, they will be able to buy your products. So if the government does not have jobs in the current moment, starting your own business is a way to go. And then they also introduced the Black Economic Empowerment. Is aimed at transforming the structure of the South African economy so that it reflects the demographics of the country. So more white people were occupying certain positions of management of power, and now other races have to be also included in big tables of decision making to make sure that not just a certain race is going higher, because the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and the gap is getting wider. So let's do what? Combine the two worlds, make it one. A scorecard, and then we have the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment. A scorecard has been created to improve Black people's access to the economy. Firms above a certain size are encouraged to improve their own rating and also to deal with other firms with a positive BEE scorecard. So let's say there's a white only owned business. It's big. They have to have Black shareholders in that business in order for them to be triple BEE compliant. And then if you have other Black people in a big company, and you must also include Black women, you are able to get tenders because of your score. You have it's a white owned company. There is a white woman in a high position. There is a Black woman in a high position. There are Black men also, Indian colors. That company will be able to get more jobs from the government because they take care of the previously disadvantaged and help uplift them. So the aim is to give Black people more of a say in ownership of companies, management positions, employment equity, especially at senior levels, and development of skills to help them have entrepreneurial qualities. Companies are also encouraged to contribute to corporate social investment schemes. So, still on the same chapter, it's very long. So we're going to talk about the democratization of economic procedures. So since 1994, the government has used several methods to democratize the economy. including labor legislations, public hearings, NEDLAC, and self-regulating bodies. So is to make the government a democracy. Labor legislation. The government has introduced laws to regulate workplaces. So we make sure that there are laws. They have introduced regular workplaces. The government has introduced laws to regulate workplaces and to protect both employees and employers. So the most important of these laws are the Labor Relations Act and the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and those Employment Equity Act. So these laws deals with collective bargaining, where salaries are negotiated, dispute resolution, where we have CCMA, skills development, the right to strike and lockout, employment services, and unemployment insurance. So the government has tried to balance workers' needs for protection and improved working conditions with employers. They need for flexibility and conditions that will promote productivity and job creation. So it's very important that the worker and the employer relationship is good. So they have introduced the Labor Relations Act and the Basic Conditions of Employment Act to make sure that people are able to carry out their jobs effectively. And then there are public hearings. All laws that the government plans to pass are first published and public comment is invited. So whenever a government wants to put out a law like the Bella Act, there were conversations about it. It was put out there. People are able to comment and criticize it. So all citizens and organizations in South Africa have the opportunity to think about the planned law and to express their view. They can protest against it and suggest change or voice their approval. The government can then make any change that are needed as long as any new law follows the guiding principles set out in South Africa's constitution. Let's talk about the NEDLAC. The National Development and Labour Council was formed in 1995 to help government, organized businesses, and organized labor to agree on macroeconomic policy, labor policy, and developmental issues. NEDLAC also considers labor legislations and laws involving the economy before they are tabled in Parliament and can give us useful feedback to government. And they can give useful feedback to government. Now, regulating bodies. When we're talking about self-regulating bodies, are organizations that represent different groups in South African economy. They're important because they are a way of involving more people in the development of economic policies. Examples of such self-regulating bodies are NEDLAC, union organizations such as Congress of South African Trade Union, employer organizations such as Business South Africa and Black Business Council, the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, the Employment Conditions Commission, and the Workplace Forum. I'm in a hurry, guys. Sorry for missing out on other words. I just want this video to go live before you write. So I have to improvise. Don't forget to like and comment. Please like the video. Comment if you have anything to say. Now, let's talk about macroeconomic adaptations. Let's talk about them. Employment grew by 12% from 96 million in 1995 to 11.2 million in 2002. So from 1995 to 2002, a lot of people got employed. So jobs grew by 12%, but job seekers by 35%. So the population is growing higher than the amount of jobs that are being available. Some of the problems that government inherited in 1994 is labor unrest, which was used as a tool for political expression by the majority of the South Africans who had no other way to make their voices heard. So now even when people want to be had by the government. They ban things and stuff. So it's what the government has inherited, because that is the way they used to fight during the apartheid era. Now a lot of people are not aware that we're no longer in apartheid. We have to go and negotiate, talking. And then a small tax base and high levels of unemployment. That's what they inherited. High government debt, resulting in part from paying subsidies to the homelands and for security. Poor and negative economic growth rates owing to sanctions and capital flight from the country. Many inefficient industries which had been established to overcome problems caused by sanctions, for example, the arms industry. Government actions to address macroeconomic adaptation is the economic performance. Growth, employment, and redistribution GEAR in 1996. GEAR did not bring enough economic growth and job in 2005. The government replaced GEAR with the Accelerated and Shared Growth Initiative. Our economy is improving and large amounts of capital regularly flows in to South Africa as foreigners invest and buy properties in the country. We still have huge problems of poverty and widespread unemployment. The gap between rich and poor has widened. Economic wealth seems to be concentrated in the hands of just a small percentage of the population. Employment remains one of Africa's biggest challenges, South Africa's biggest challenges. Job creation is not keeping pace with the large numbers entering the labor market. Each year, as young people leave school and college, university to look for work, the global economic recession of 2009 to 2010 caused many job losses and left business owners cautious about employing new staffs. So employment encountered in creating employment. So if you are a person, you want to create employment, these are the problems you will face. Legal minimum wages and working conditions in South Africa are high compared to those in many developing countries. So worker productivity is not high in South Africa. So workers are said to be not as productive. There is high level of crime added to the cost of running a business. And then many other countries produce manufactured goods more cheaply than we do. China and India and several countries in Southeast Asia produce textiles, electronic goods, and vehicles that can be imported for sale in South Africa more cheaply than similar products can be manufactured here. So we have people manufacturing better, efficiently with low cost than we can. Let's talk about income inequality. In South Africa, the gap between rich and poor is steadily getting wider. So poor people do not have enough access to education, good healthcare, and employment. Therefore, they stay poor. Some South Africans are where am I? Some South Africans are spectacularly rich and live in luxury, while others have to eke out an existence. Two opinions on this issue. Supporters of a free market system believe that those with more wealth can invest in businesses and spend to create jobs, thus allowing more poor people to find employment. Socialists believe that all South Africans' resources belong to all its citizens, and that all citizens should benefit equally from them. They believe government should nationalize all private assets and share them among all South Africans. No socialist economy has ever been successful anywhere in the world. Socialist economies are less efficient than free market economies. So what I will advise you to know is to know and learn extensively about the free market system and the socialist belief. It can be asked as an additional question on your essay. Let's look at social grants. The government has attempted to alleviate the problems experienced by the very poor by increasing the number of people who receive social grants. The money for these grants come from taxes. And then let's look at poverty. Many South Africans continue to live in poverty with not enough money to buy foods and other basic necessities. So the government is trying to solve this problem with the urban renewal program, and the integrated sustainable rural development program, as well as social grant system. So you should know all of these programs, guys. It's very important. And what do they do? Let's talk about stability. The South African economy is stable, so we are making slow but steady progress towards providing basic facilities such as housing, healthcare, water, electricity to previously disadvantaged section of society. So political and economic stability in South Africa attracts foreign investment in businesses and property. So let's look at these two questions. You can pause the video, do these questions, and I'll show you the answer. Oh, sorry guys, I thought I had answers on this one, but you can just look back at the notes. And yeah, thank you for watching. Until the next video.